Today, we are going to wrap up our discussion about essentially a book that I wrote, or a little booklet that I wrote called Capital Disaster, that talked through some of the biggest challenges that we face as capital project managers in how to overcome those challenges or to avoid them altogether. So that's what the Capital Disaster booklet was all about, was to help manufacturing engineers and project engineers and process engineers manage through some of the challenges associated with capital equipment projects. So that's what we want to do at CapEx, is deliver value to our customers, our manufacturing engineers that we serve out there in the manufacturing world. As I always say, we are grateful for your business and grateful for the opportunity to serve you. So this is our way of sharing knowledge that we have gleaned from the market over the last 20 plus years of effort. So again, if you're interested in this booklet, just let us know. We would happily send it over to you. We could send it via email, or we can send it via the actual booklet hard copy itself. All right, so this is the only marketing that we do during this whole conversation. Just want you to remember that we represent ATC Automation out of Cookeville, Tennessee. They are a large capital or automation company based out of Cookeville, Tennessee. 85% of their business is with repeat customers. That is huge, because in that business in particular, there are a lot of, I always say, dead bodies, challenging projects that the companies that built them did not follow through. And not that every project that we have worked on has been amazingly successful, but ATC always follows through and always has a mission of doing the right thing for the customer. Cincinnati, and as a result of that, 85% of the business we do is with repeat customers, and that is huge in that world. Cincinnati Test Systems, the largest leak test company in the world, focused on pressure decay, mass flow, helium mass spec, leak test equipment. We have standard instrumentation as well as custom equipment that we build. We also do a significant amount of functional testing for end-of-line functional tests using hydraulic fluids, or testing electronics and things such as that. Huge part of our business. Duquesne Plastic Joining, another huge company that is global and diverse. They have locations all around the world, focused on assembling plastic equipment. So ultrasonic welding, hot plate welding, vibration welding, hot gas welding, infrared welding, all things welding, laser welding, you name it. If you're putting a part together that is plastic, Duquesne has an option and solution for you. They have standard products as well as custom solutions. They do all of their own tooling in-house for their vibration equipment, for their hot plate welders. They make their own sonic probes. Everything is done, again, in-house. Symetric is a high-speed in-process test and data company. They are part of Cincinnati Test Systems. We talk about them separately because they're focused on Industry 4.0 and specifically managing data to help make sense of the data and help you utilize that data to improve your process and ultimately deliver a better quality product to your customer. Then we work with Keller Technologies out of Fort Mill, South Carolina. They have a comprehensive line of industrial air filtration that's wet as well as dry air filtration. All right, so let's get right into the content of today's discussion. As we start out with each of these, let's talk about the challenge. The challenge is in managing capital projects and ensuring that they aren't a capital disaster, as I've experienced many times in my career. So if you're not sure where to start, so project managers that succeed are not smarter than project managers that fail, but they use the tools that we're going to talk about here to succeed. So they master communication, they master planning. So if you want to be excellent at what you do in managing capital projects, number one is communication. We've got to master the art of communication with our team, communication with outside sources, meaning the suppliers that we are using to help us build the equipment that we're going to install or perform the process. So the secret weapon are the tools and templates that you can find. Either you can develop them. We've got some that we're happy to share with you, but these are going to help you keep the project organized and moving forward. So we're going to look at some of the ways that the mistakes that we've seen, the challenges associated with managing capital projects result in being a capital disaster. So we want to help you avoid that, and that's why we are having these conversations. All right. So thrown under the bus. Now, apologize for all of the words, but sometimes they're necessary to help get the point across. But a lack of management support is a big problem. I've seen it happen on many projects. And when there is a lack of management support, what happens is if the project is not successful, the first person to get thrown under the bus is the project manager or the manufacturing engineer or the process engineer, whatever the title is for the person that is managing the project that is being brought into the facility. So project managers become the scapegoat. So it's important that you communicate as a project manager with management, with everyone involved. So here's why this becomes such a problem and how the lack of support is demonstrated. So a lack of resources. So if management is not properly supporting the project, then they're not going to provide the resources necessary to execute at a high level and successfully. So you're going to either lack capital or you're going to lack human beings to help you progress the project through until conclusion. So it's important that you have the appropriate resources and you identify ideally up front, do I have the funding necessary to execute this project? And will I get the proper support with the personnel required for me to succeed? A lack of accountability. So they're not, a lack of transparency causes project managers to need to go to management for help in moving things along because timing and budget will be in jeopardy. So there needs to be a level of accountability within the team that is helping you move the project forward. And sometimes you're going to require management support to tell the quality manager to get the quality engineer involved to support you in identifying what the quality plan or quality strategy needs to be to ensure that the equipment is producing proper quality parts. So if you're not getting support, maybe purchasing isn't buying the parts that you need or following through and getting the product that you're going to need to debug and run the equipment off. In those cases, that lack of accountability for the people that are on your team, you're going to need to go to management and get their support. That's why you want to keep management engaged. A lack of communication. So every organization has its communication issues, but projects that lack management often suffer. That lack management support, they lack communication because people don't care, right? So if people in operations don't care because management doesn't care, then that is going to result in nobody caring, and you're going to be left holding the ball as a project manager. So again, identify the level of commitment that your management has in ensuring that the project that you're about to manage is going to be successful. You need their support. You need management support. We're going to talk about some tools and ways and strategies to ensure that you get their support and are able to, in some ways, hold them accountable to supporting you the way you need to be supported to execute the project. So unwilling to decide. So people that are unwilling to decide or make decisions, mainly because they're scared of doing something wrong or they want to preserve themselves. So this is a common problem that I see with something as it relates to where the equipment's going to go in a facility, what technology to apply or use in the product, or making changes. So if people are unwilling to decide, if they just kick the can down the road, it's going to make it very difficult for you to manage. So you're going to need management to step in. So you need management support to step in and help force decisions when people are being tasked to make decisions, but they're unwilling to really move forward on those decisions. Next, on getting thrown under the bus, it's difficult to overcome. And so here is why. So the CPM, the capital project manager, doesn't get thrown under the bus by management because they did not provide the support required. So here's what we want to make sure that we're doing as project managers to ensure that we don't get caught in the crossfire or get, as I say, thrown under the proverbial bus. So we want to document everything, every meeting, every request, every denial, every approval, everything that's been communicated. You want to make sure that you're documenting that. We've got to have a paper trail. And I know it's a CYA type of mentality, but it's important that when push comes to shove, that you've got the appropriate information to back you up when it comes to management. So your role, again, as a project manager, Communicate, communicate, communicate. That is the number one role of a project manager. Manage risk, communicate, but communication is how we go about managing the risk. So follow up. So follow project management communication rules. Here they are. Avoid lengthy emails and documents. Be succinct, because people do not read lengthy emails and documents these days. So you've got to be succinct. Bullet points. Identify exactly what you're asking for and put dates associated with it, and what are the consequences for not following through. So state the reason for the communication clearly. Use bullet points. Breaking up communication with bullet points and lists makes it easier for people to kind of sort through and then identify what is their responsibility and role, and get a bigger, broad view of the project overall and what the challenges are. Create and use templates. So identify actions required by whom, what day, as I mentioned before. But when you create templates, again, people will, as they review them, they'll get more and more, or they'll get better and better and more efficient at utilizing those templates to make sure that they are staying clear and up to speed with what's going on. Share the messages only with the relevant team members. Don't CC everybody in the world on your communication. So CC the people that really matter as it relates to what you are communicating. Keep people in the know as necessary, but don't communicate everything to every person, because not everyone needs the information. And then they begin to ignore your communication because your communication is not relevant to them. Make sure that whoever you're sending the emails to or processing the information through is relevant to them. Otherwise, you're going to be ignored, and people are not going to, listen to what you're saying. So those are the keys to communication as a project leader. So here are some strategies that you want to implement to help ensure that, again, that you don't get thrown under the bus. This is some of the bigger picture type things. Regular meetings. Set a time, set an agenda, set people that are going to participate in it, and then share the results with management. You want to make sure that, again, that documentation, documenting the process, keeping everyone up to speed with what's going on with the project. Huge part of what your responsibility is as a project manager. Face-to-face. So you want to build rapport with your team and your management. So lunch is an excellent option. Bring in lunch and have everyone in. You want to begin to make sure that the people that are on the team that are helping you execute this project are ready to support you, willing to support you. The way that you do that is you build rapport with them, and they know that you have their best interest at heart. And then hopefully, as a result of that goodwill, they will have your best interest at heart as well. Pick up the phone. Too often, we want to send an email. Oh, I'll send an email. Oh, I'll send an email. The reality is, voice communication is a better way of building rapport with your team members than just sending an email. And then when you get compliance or buy-in for what it is that you're asking for, and then you follow up with an email. Again, we want to make sure that we're documenting the process. It sounds a bit CYA, but I guess really that's what it is, to prevent getting thrown under the bus. We've talked about this before when we talked about capital project mastery and how that process works, but executive summary. Creating an executive summary and updating it regularly is an excellent way to continue to communicate with your management at a high level. Not a lot of detail, just the bullet points on what's going on, what we agreed to in the beginning, and then what we're going to do moving forward. So here's what the executive summary should include. Why? So you're gonna actually do this documentation early on in the process if you are following the capital project mastery strategy. So you're going to identify, why is this project necessary? Is it because of a new program? Is it because of safety issues? Is it because of efficiency opportunities with the program? So we want to make sure that we are clear on why we are moving forward with this capital project. This is part of the executive summary. When? What are the critical milestones? What's the timeline for everything that's going to be happening? So some low-level explanation as to why those dates are critical, and some of the things that need to happen in order to make sure that those dates happen. So how? Project overview. What's the vision of the successful project? Remember that success in life and success in managing projects is to begin with the end in mind. What is it going to look like? Where's it going to go? What's the vision? Is it going to be the most sophisticated and advanced piece of equipment that's ever been installed in your facility? If so, state it, talk about it, communicate with the audience as far as get them excited about the project. So the how is really important. Okay, who? So the ideal list of resources to assist you. Who do you need to ensure success on this project? the quality engineer, purchasing, maintenance people. Who is it that you're going to need in your organization to help ensure success with the project? What are the summary of risks? Now, this is what you're going to be updating on a monthly basis. I encourage you to do this on a monthly basis. Identify the risks and make sure you're communicating the risks with management. Keep them up to speed. That is the way you avoid getting thrown on the bus. You say, hey, I communicated this. I asked for input, feedback, guidance, and I didn't get it. So that isn't necessarily a get out of jail free card, but communicating the risks on a regular basis and keeping everyone up to speed is important. You want to make sure that you're documenting the finances. Are we in budget, over budget? Where do we stand as it relates to budget? Because remember, the idea here for a capital investment is a return on investment. Your management has a fiduciary obligation to your organization to use the resources available in the organization to improve the cash flow, improve the profitability of the business. That is their responsibility. So you want to help them be successful, and you want to communicate that status in this executive summary that you're providing to them. And that's one reason why I'll read the dang thing in the first place. So you want the signature list. Who needs to approve the project? Make sure that they're a part of this. They're a part of the communication, and that they have signed off initially that, yep, this is what we want. Understand the timing. Here's the financial responsibilities. Here are the risks that we're signing up for as an organization. Just make sure that everyone is aware of it and just get their signature. It's just that simple, or maybe that difficult. So getting buy-in is really critical to avoid getting thrown under the bus. Another capital project challenge is disarray and chaos. I've seen it many times, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons for the disarray and chaos and some of the strategies for helping to avoid these as you are managing your capital projects. So your role, again, as a project manager is to follow the process. If you don't have a process, then disarray and chaos is going to ensue, because there's so many moving pieces to managing a capital project, especially in the manufacturing world. Not that it isn't in other arenas, but the manufacturing world in particular, you've got internal customers that you have to deal with. You've got external customers that you have to deal with, and you have suppliers that you have to deal with. And so you're battling on three fronts to keep everyone informed, to listen to people's ideas, but yet keep focused on executing the project. So it's important that your company has a project management process in place with tools, templates, strategies to help ensure you succeed. If they don't, then join the Capital Project Mastery Program, learn the processes, and then begin to execute them in your organization. So your responsibility is manage risk. There are two components to risks that you need to communicate. Number one is the budget. I know we've talked about this before, but I want to reiterate. You've got to manage the budget, because that's going to affect the return on investment. And the idea of every capital project is to ensure a return on investment. That's why we spend money. That's why we invest money, is to raise the level of profitability, raise cash flow, increase cash flow in our business. The second risk area is timing. So the project was justified based on it being completed in a set amount of time. And that set amount of time is going to determine how quickly the business is going to cash flow. So we call that revenue recognition. When is the company going to begin to benefit from the sale of product that's being produced, or the efficiency that is going to be gained as a result of the change or new process that's going to be implemented? So those milestones are extremely important that you communicate on a regular basis. If they slip, everyone needs to know, because it's going to affect your return on investment, and it's going to affect your customers' level of satisfaction with how you are executing and supporting and serving them. There are three major stages to projects: selection, execution, and implementation. So we're going to talk about those three phases and some of the highlights and how to maintain continuity in each of these phases. So the selection phase, we've talked extensively about this. This is when you're creating the RFQ, you're creating the scope, you're identifying exactly what it is that is going to be required, what's the project going to look like, and getting clear on the suppliers. So these are the questions that we ask. What is the objective of the investment? Is it a new program? Safety? Is it efficiency? What are the desired outcomes for the stakeholders? Again, stakeholders are the people that are signing off on the project, and that's why we're talking about keeping them informed, keeping them in the loop. What is the timeline? Is the timeline possible? That's what you have to be thinking about as you're signing up for a project. Is this doable? Because if it's not, I want to encourage you to reconsider signing up to do the project. Now, maybe you might not have a choice. I get that, but it's important that if you recognize that the project timeline is unachievable, that you communicate it. That's the executive summary. That's a risk, a line item risk that you would put in the capital summary or in the executive summary. And it's also something you would identify in the milestones as something that is unachievable as it relates to the available time for the project or whatever the reasons are that it is going to be impossible to execute. Is the product design frozen? So that's a pretty common question, especially in the automotive world. If it's not, then there are going to be some challenges potentially by moving forward with a design that's not frozen. That's going to cause you to tear things up and redo things if indeed they do change the product design. What is the budget? Is the budget approved? If the budget is not approved, when will it be approved? So these are just the questions that you need to be asking, again, to avoid disarray and chaos. Because what happens is if the budget isn't approved, then that's going to push or kick the can down the road as it relates to making a decision to moving forward with the project or choosing a supplier, because you can't choose a supplier if the budget isn't approved because you got no money approved with which to pull from. So if that's the case and the timeline continues to shrink because they aren't allowing or aren't approving the budget, then again, you got to push back. That is a risk. That is a risk to executing the project in a timely manner. So what are the technical requirements? What's the throughput, floor space, infrastructure required? What are there any new processes? So understanding that's important during the selection phase. What is the chain of command? Who is in the management? Who's your champion inside management? And are they going to continue to be your champion inside management? Again, because if you don't have enough time, if you don't have enough resources, then you're going to need a champion to help you get the resources that you need to be successful. Next, these are, again, getting clear on these areas during the selection phase. We talked about the importance of the executive summary. You want to have the request for appropriations or funding request. That's another component. Request for quote is another component. Open issues list. You're going to start that from the beginning and communicate with your project team from the beginning. Here are the open issues. Identify potential vendors. Gather the drawings and support documents that will be required and you're going to share with your potential vendors so that they can put together a quotation. Lay out the timeline for the project. So those are the key aspects that you want to make sure that you get clear on during the selection phase. Now we got the execution phase. So this is when the real work begins. So after you kick off the supplier, your focus then is turning to monitor the progress of the project. So you clearly define the quality plan, then you clearly define the runoff. So this is when you're going to get some of the finer action steps defined so that going into the last phase, you are well prepared and have it well documented on what you're going to measure and how you're going to ensure success. So you're going to attend design reviews and you're going to communicate on a regular basis. Every week, you want to be meeting with your team, you want to be meeting with your suppliers, and you want to be communicating with your team. Every month, you want to be communicating with your management. Here's the executive summary. Here's the updated executive summary. Highlight in yellow the changes from the previous summary so that they are immediately drawn to it. They don't find your email to be a waste of time. It's something that is easy for them to see. Again, your success as a project manager is going to be dependent on your ability to communicate. And ideally, you manage up, because if you manage up, that's going to help you move up in your organization. That's what we want you to do. We want you to use your skills to grow in your organization. Ultimately, you earn more money, you have more responsibility, and sometimes that's fun. So here are the critical components during the execution phase. You want to develop a quality plan. What are the quality standards? And how will you verify that the products meet those standards as they come off of the equipment? You want to perform and create the specifications. You want the process steps. So in some cases, there might be a need to define the process steps known to produce the best quality products. What is the runoff plan? So these are all specifications that you need to create or plans that you need to create to ensure that you've got and identified the strategy and how you're going to ensure success for the project. Now we got the execution phase. So post-runoff. So we got installation, requalify, operator training, documentation, spare parts, maintenance training. This is chaos. This is really, really busy during this phase. So you've got the facility prep plan. How are you going to make sure that the facility is ready? I tell a story about my first project when I was an engineer at Cummins Engine Company. 2 weeks in, they said, "Hey, Russ, we've got some money to buy a wash system." I had no idea what I was doing. I hadn't been prepared for that in college, but I was excited to spend the money. And when the machine shipped, it arrived at our facility, and I had not prepared the area in which the machine was going to go. So we had other equipment in that area. So we had to spend a couple of days, trying to get everything cleared out and the floor prepped and everything ready to set the equipment. As you can imagine, my name was mud in that facility because the fork trucks were driving around the machine in order to put product into the back of the tractor trailers because the wash system was sitting on the dock. So that was a real problem that needed to work through. So implementation phase. What does this phase look like? The CPM must demonstrate leadership, confidence, communication during this phase. This is really, really important that you are clear on the vision for the equipment, right? So we established that vision up in the beginning. Now your job is to implement and make sure that that vision becomes reality for the facility. So it's important that you implement these different actions during the phase. So debug, this is the supplier responsibility. Ideally, the debug includes your maintenance team getting involved to assist. Hands-on experience with your maintenance team is going to be super helpful for them long-term because that's going to allow them to take ownership of the equipment, and that's what you want. You want your people internally to own the equipment that you are purchasing, because if they don't, they're going to rely on you or the supplier, and that can be overwhelming for you, and it can be very expensive to continue to rely on the supplier for the necessary technical support. So you want to make sure that you are getting them involved in that debug phase. Pre-runoff. So the best plan is to work through the pre-runoff checklist while you're on site with the supplier. So before the equipment even gets shipped, right? So what's the operator training look like? What's the quality planning look like? What are the materials inventoried? What is the safety checklist? What's the maintenance checklist? So what are the things that you need to do prior to runoff to ensure that you are ready to execute at a high level? So here are the phases. So here are the different actions, the things that happen. So you've got the runoff, post runoff. So this is when you work through the checklist for ensuring that anything identified during the runoff is checked off, is cleaned up, is fixed prior to the equipment being shipped. So how can you better prepare for the next runoffs? What went well? It's important that you take time and you do a lessons learned with your team and ideally the supplier so that you are better prepared to execute at a high level the next time. That's how you grow and learn as a capital project manager. That's how you grow and learn in any situation, is that you do it and then you step back and you say, how did I do? What can we do to get better the next time, and communicate that to your entire organization. How was the supplier experience? Did they do well? Were they a pain in the butt to work with? How could they have performed better? So give them feedback on what they could do to better serve you and their other customers through your experience. Oops, let's see here. I skipped one. All right, continuing on. So we got the installation plan. This plan should address all necessary facility prep. The installation, minimal production interruption will be key. Will be with one B. So ideally, installation is on the weekends, holidays, and off shifts. The CPM must be present. You got to be there. You got to be there at all times in order to ensure that the project is being properly installed. It's really got to be on point. It's a really important time for the project. And then the factory acceptance test. So obviously you got it at your facility. You want to make sure that you duplicate whatever it was that you did at your supplier. Next. All right. So in summary of capital disaster, here's what we've got. The entire organization should be aligned to ensure the capital project investment and to ensure that the success of the capital project launch in your organization. It's really important, right? So the return on investment, the cash flow, the effectiveness of your business, of the company that you work for, is dependent on a successful launch of capital equipment. You want to have a signed executive summary that is a reference document that can serve as a reminder to everyone involved in the project. Hey, here's what we signed up for. This was the vision. These were the challenges. These were the milestones. Everyone knew up front what we were going up against, so there should be no surprises. And if you continue to update that document and keep your management informed, it will help you be seen as someone that is a communicator in your organization and is going to help you, again, move up the food chain. Successful project management is mostly about keeping things on track and avoiding unexpected expenditures, right? So timeline, cost, anything that is going to jeopardize the timing or is going to jeopardize the cost are risks that need to quickly be identified and sometimes raised up to the management level in your organization. Selection, execution, and implementation, those are the three phases of project management. So in order to ensure success, you make sure that you don't lose focus in any of those phases, especially the execution phase. It's easy after you make a selection to just coast along while others build the equipment and others do the work. So you want to make sure that you are executing or you're paying attention during that execution phase so that you can maintain continuity from stage to stage. All right, so what are topics that you want to cover into 2021? Let us know what you want to cover so that we can identify those topics. We'll set some presentations up. We'll get some interviews with people if you want. Whatever we need to do to continue to help add value to you, that is our mission. That's what we're all about. As always, I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you. We are grateful. So we got Mike Dorsey in South Carolina. We got Chris Mullins in Eastern North Carolina and Virginia. And then yours truly is focused on Western North Carolina and then select accounts in the upstate. So appreciate you. Wish you all the best. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Stay safe. And we'll look forward to communicating with you next in 2021. Bye-bye.